Burning Easy, Chapter 17, 18, 19 by Chen Hao Chi, Luciano Gavala, Jorge Luc, and Rosario Sfeir.
I walked along the valley and I could see Pendle Hill. There were the houses of Rugley, where my old home was. When I was going to call, the devil whispered to me and I realized that I need to do more than just confessing. I decided to take Johan and Tolly to jail, but then I told myself that it was the devil who was talking to me. For the first time in ages, I want to see Janet, and now we were both witches against our will. And I want to convince her to confess with me to Parson. He told me that if we do that, we won't be hung. So I turned away to Colne. I arrived to Colne and I hid behind a wall to wait for Janet. Then she came out, followed by her Uncle James. They were looking really thin and moving really slow. Then she got up on her feet and started to walk down the hill. She was alone, so I waited until she was out of sight and ran to catch her up. Janet just stood there, so I thought that she was not pleased to see me. But then I realized that she didn't move to me because she and Uncle James were starving to death and was so hard for them to move. We got into a shelter. Janet started to tell me what was happening in the town. First, the witch hunter work was low out, and no one was giving food to witches because they were too afraid to be accused to be one. Also, Allison was convinced that she meant paralyzed and man and unable to speak, so she felt guilty and confessed. In her interview, the witchfinder also arrested Demdike and Lizzie, and according to the people, he tortured them. Everyone in the town was scared because once you had fallen into Badwin's hands, it doesn't matter if you're a witch or not. He will make you confess either way. Since the coming of this man, that wasn't making any business as a cunning man, so he had to accept help from his neighbors. Parson Holden ordered him to stop working under the threat of arrest. But either way, I was glad to hear that Nat and Gil were safe. Also, Janet said that her grandmother told her that Johan must be a very powerful witch to trick her like that with the mannequin. So I told her about what I see on the Sabbath. And she said that Johan must be very powerful because at her Sabbath, they only have a man who dresses up and not a devil on the fire. Then she said that it was only a matter of time before she get arrested. So I asked her if she wants to confess with me. Perhaps it will save her as well. But Janet thought that she will be hanged because she sold her soul and she have a mark to prove that. I told her what Parson told me. God never abandoned his children and he will forgive us if we are truly repented and we confessed. But Demdike told her that once she had sold her soul, it was gone for good, and no one could ever get it back for her. I explained that, according to Parson, the devils want her to believe in that, but it was not really true. Demdike was only tricking her. She asked me if she will stop being a witch if she confessed. My answer was yes. She accepted, and we both were going to confess. We never want to be witches. Now we are on our way down the hill.
Janet was fully prepared to confess. Now she was ready to betray her family. They had bullied Janet all her life, and now for the first time she was free. Janet and I were getting closer to calm. I was feeling miserable and I couldn't see honesty in myself. I asked Janet about Johan's story that the witch's god wasn't completely a devil, and that he was the god of animals and nature. Janet told me that she had heard the story, and that devil said that the horns he had was a sign that he was a lord of the beasts and of men. They said that Demdike believed all Christian stories about Satan and devil worship. These witches wanted to help and claimed that their god was like the Christian god, but Demdike said that they were fooling themselves and if they don't do harm, they would go feel the pain in hell. When we reached Cologne, it became very clear that everyone knew about us. When we were entering the main pit of the town, we were recognized. "There's a little witch!" someone shouted. People ran up to see us, and soon we were surrounded by a crowd that were shouting angrily at us. "We're going to hang Janet Dendyke," someone shouted. "We're going to confess and get back our souls," Janet shouted. That shut some of them, but one shouted that it was too late to confess. The crowd was getting angrier and they pushed closer to us. "The other one's a witch too. She's the one that burned Budwin." When they heard this, they backed off. I was famous on my own town. A group of men decided that confession was good for us, so they seized us and dragged us to lane away. The crowd was getting bigger all the time. We were lifted up into air and carried along on a flood of screaming people, punching and poking at us as we passed close to them. We were through to the magistrate's door. The door opened and a footman dragged us inside.
We stayed there for about 5 hours before we were summoned up to confess. There were 3 men waiting for us: Magistrate Norwell, Parson Holden, and Bedwin. His face was still scarred by blood red streaks. "That's her, the worst of them," Bedwin said. "We were coming to confess," Janet said. They were on their way to the parsonage when the crowd took them, but Baldwin shook his head. "No witch ever confessed without persuasion," Baldwin answered. "Issy told me that if I confessed myself and my family, God will take my soul back from the devil," Janet said. "I never wanted it. They made me do it. They said that once the devil had my soul, I would never be able to get it back." "If you truly repent, God will forgive you," Holden nodded. "Are you willing to tell everything we want to know?" Holden asked. "Everything against them," swore Janet. The parson nodded. "Then there's no reason why you shouldn't lead a long and useful Christian life." "If you confess truly, God will forgive you," the parson added. "It's not for a man to forgive her. She must be sent to her Maker for judgment. Leave her with me for an hour, and I will tell you everything she knows," Baldwin said. "I have seen enough of your work," Noel growled. Noel called in a clerk to take down Janet's words, and she began to talk. She accused everyone. She told that there had been a meeting of witches at Malkin Tower after Demdike's arrest. She told when they met, where, what they had said, and who they had murdered. "We have enough to hammer it all," Norwell said. "It's your turn, Easy." "You saw what she did," Baldwin hissed. "The same applies to Isabel," Holden answered firmly. "You will take the word of a witch? This one set hellfire to burn me," Baldwin said angrily. "If God is to judge her, he will bring her to him on his own way," said Holden. "I have known Isabel all her life. There's no harm in her." The witchfinder jabbed his words at the parson. "You are in the league with them," he hissed. Noel snapped. "Is this a formal accusation?" The discussion was over. "Speak, Issy. Tell us about Johann A. Styles," Holden asked. "I confess to being a witch. I confess using devil help to throw Baldwin off his horse, but I couldn't against Johann." "The devil has her," gloated Baldwin. "Isabel, you would be wise to tell us everything," Noel said. "Please, Issy," he repeated. Parson stood up. "I want to speak to her for a moment." "Listen to what the parson tells you, Isabel," Noel told me. He led Baldwin outside. "You know she's a witch, don't you?" he asked me, and I nodded. I told him that I followed her to the Sabbath and that I saw the devil there. He frowned. "I wish you had left sooner. She's here," he added. "Johann? Here?" There was accusation from John. "What did he do?" I asked. The parson shook his head. "Is she alive?" "She is. I don't know how." "I want to see her," I said, standing. "Not yet. You have to confess first." I shook my head. "She confessed and accused you," the parson added. "Me?" She told us everything. She held for a long time. She wanted to give her friends a chance. She told me that if they ever caught me, I should confess everything. I added. He looked down at me. That man wants revenge. You have to tell everything. I nodded. I had a sudden thought. She told everything. There was something I had to know. Did she tell you about Sabbath? I asked. She told us about the Sabbath. He said she doesn't call him the devil. According to her, he's an old god. She told us that it was the Christians who gave the devil the old gold shape. This god may visit them in their own minds, but it was not a real monster you saw. A man dresses up to represent him. Parson bent and kissed my cheek before he called for the magistrate to hear my confession.
Chapter 19. That night I awoke to a terror which was so familiar but always surprised me. The fire was burning my face, my hands. I was choking. I felt the hard grip of the man who was holding me in the flames. I'm fighting for breath, fighting to turn my head. And then I heard Johan's voice. She's saying the same things when I had the previous dreams. Issy, look in the fire. She's still with me, so this time I will believe her. When I opened my eyes, I saw a woman's face that I wouldn't like to remember. I remember denying that face for so many years. That face looked very like my own. It was a face that had finished her suffering. I felt happy to see that face. Everything's happening so slowly. The flames slapped my mother. There was me, yelling, "Don't hurt my mommy!" Then the soldier got pushed by my force and fell into the flames. And then Johan was there struggling for me in the fire. I watched all and I remembered it all. I woke up and the floor of the cell was wet. Janet was shaking me and stroking my face, and she whispered me that there's no fire. Janet was pressing me to feel the warmth, and then I whispered her back, I wish there was fire. Now I know that face that was in the fire, and I knew why I had been so terrified. I could see her face clearly in my mind, and I could hear my own baby voice screaming. We spent a lot of days in there. We just woke up and fell asleep. We didn't know if it had passed 1 hour or 1 day or 1 week. We were always in a corner to get warm. Sometimes we tried to climb to get out, but we couldn't. At first, we waited till Parson Holden came one day to save us, but it never happened. Maybe there was just holding us to testify against in the trials. It must happen when it was at night. When I awoke, there was breeze blowing in our cell. The wind increased and then came the wild instincts. There was no prison stink. There was the outdoors. Janet was afraid, but I wasn't. I was excited. I felt the wind through my face. I felt the creatures flying past. And then the moon came down, and every corner of our cell was filled with light silver. Outside, I heard the guards shouting, the moon has came down." I heard them crying. The guard appeared and said, "Send the moon away, witch," but I had no power. I just shook my head. Then the face vanished. Then the moon came down, so down that I could brush the moon's cheek with my hand. The world beat red around me. It was just as Johann had said. At the moment I stopped believing in the devil and evil. The horned man was the strength of the life. I let that strength fill me up and overflow me, and fill the cell, and the corridors and the whole cell. The wind dropped quite silently. Leaves that had been rushing around the cell dropped to the ground. I heard a night bird call, and then I was myself again. I heard a noise in the corner, and I saw Janet. Janet was staring at me. As Janet backed away to a corner, I held out my hand and asked if Janet was coming. Janet told me that she would not go with him. I went to the door and I tried it. It was open. No door would be closed against me. I urged Janet to come with me, but she shook her head. She told me that she would pray for me. I stepped into the dark corridor and I heard Janet's voice tell me that she can't come, that she doesn't dare to come. I went to another cell, and it was Johann's cell. She told me that she felt my dream and I am myself again. Then Johan told me that witches were burned after they were hanged in Scotland. She told me that my mother was her sister, and she did not feel pain when she was burned, and that soldier wanted me to see my mother burn. I insisted Johan to come with me, but she refused. She told me that she had to stay, and that she was finished, and she told me that Tolly got away and I must find him. Johan told me that Tolly had gone south down to Essex. She also told me that I must keep the memory of the horned man alive, because we were all gone and he is forgotten, the world would begin to die. A few moments later, when I was outside, I saw a heavy bird that flew into a tree above me. I looked up and it called me. It was a strange call. That call made me start with hope. I screamed to see if Johan was still there, but no one answered. Soon I heard the bird's wing carried away. It knew that Johan was free, and I prayed for her. Then I pulled myself together and started heading south. I wanted to call Nat and Jill before I made my way down to Essex, where I hoped to find Tolly and some other friends of mine.